like to thank everyone for coming. We're going to start the lecture. Before we begin, I'll introduce Howard Davis, but before we begin, I'd like to just point out some upcoming lectures as well in the lecture series. This Wednesday, we have Robert McCarter, who will be lecturing on a lecture called Right from the Start. He's published extensively on Frank Lloyd Wright, I think up to 5 full-volume books. And I think that's an excellent opportunity to see an amazing Frank Lloyd Wright scholar. So again, that's on Wednesday here, and it's actually also on Friday up in Portland. And then some other upcoming lectures the following Monday. So again, we're getting into a rhythm of every Monday. B.D. Wortham Galvin, who's a faculty member at PSU. And her research is on kind of urban interventions, spontaneous urban interventions, and urban participation, which I think is pretty fitting here. The following Monday is, the 5th rather, is Eugene Sandoval from ZGF. That's also Monday. And then Jen Jennings will be lecturing on the 21st. And a last lecture, what we're doing is a collaboration with the AIA Design Excellence, and that is on the last Thursday, the 22nd, but that's Carol Coletta. That's a great opportunity. That's a Thursday at the Holt. And again, that's with the Design Excellence Committee in collaboration. This idea of kind of connecting, bringing our students downtown to connect with the AIA and activities there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Howard Davis, the Director of Graduate Studies, graduate program, and he would introduce Hajo. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. And a special welcome to the prospective students who are here for Grad Day. It's my personal and professional pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. Professor Hajo Neis is a member of the faculty of the Department of Architecture based at our White Stag facility in Portland. I've known Hajo a long time, since he began as a student at the University of California, Berkeley, where I was teaching and working at the Center for Environmental Structure with Chris Alexander. Over the years, I've gotten to know Hajo very well, teaching and working with him in Oregon, in California, in Europe, and in Japan. When Hajo was being considered for a position in our department in 2001, he gave a talk in which he described his own background as having been in 2 different architectural worlds. On one hand was the world of architectural modernism, which he experienced through working with his architect father in Germany and through his own education in architecture at the Technical University of Darmstadt, one of the leading schools of architecture in Germany. The other is the world of organic architecture and complex systems, which Hajo experienced through his professional and academic work at Berkeley, particularly with Chris Alexander. Hajo's background is both broad and deep. In addition to architecture, Hajo studied philosophy at the University of Frankfurt with people such as Theodor Adorno and other members of the Frankfurt School of Philosophy. He studied city planning and worked with the United Nations on urban projects in Africa, and he did both a master's degree in planning and a PhD in architecture at Berkeley. In his work with Alexander, he did a series of projects, most notably the Asian School in Tokyo, which figures strongly in today's lecture. And he also has an independent practice. In Portland, in addition to directing our academic program for the 2nd time, he is the director of the Portland Urban Architecture Research Laboratory and is a co-director of the Collaborative for Inclusive Urbanism. He's the author of many papers and books, one of which helps give the title to tonight's lecture. Hajo is highly appreciated by our students in Portland. His studios are popular, oversubscribed, and dealing with issues of great importance. For the last 3 years, he's been teaching an advanced studio that is concerned with the issue of reconstruction after disaster, a topic that is, of course, of increasing importance in the world. The results of that studio, in which students have chosen sites ranging from Haiti to the Middle East to the coast of Japan, have been provocative additions to our work. But I think that the other reason students are attracted to Hajo has to do with the respect he offers them and indeed everyone he deals with. Hajo always finds the best in people, and this positive attitude and nature shapes not only his social world, but also his attitudes to the contemporary world of architecture and cities. Please join me in welcoming Professor Hajo Neis.
Well, Howard, thank you very much. That was a highly generous introduction. Thank you very much indeed. And Philip, thank you for the overall introduction. Thank you very much. I also would like to say right from the beginning that this lecture is dedicated to the students you just talked about from the Regenerative Design Studio. And I'm very, very thankful that you all made it today here, even though the weather is so fantastic outside. And so thanks very much for coming. I think I don't get a laser pointer. I have to just do it like this. As Howard already mentioned, I'm the director of the school or of the program in Portland and also of Perl. And I am going right to what we are going to talk about, the contents of the lecture today is actually a three-part lecture. And we only can do part one today, obviously, not even sure if we can finish part one, because as you can see, Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth, which is obviously the book title that we are going to talk about it. You see the book cover on the left-hand side. Book that was worked on together with Chris Alexander. Obviously, he's the main author, his wife Maggie and myself. And the table of contents there you see from 1 to 8. I would like to get through 1 to 8, but I'm not sure we can stop at any time because I also added one more project into that normally I would not necessarily show, and that is because it has to do with the Eugene, with the Eugene campus and with working in Eugene. That is the project number 4, where it says Agate and Amazon. The Eugene campus, Agate and Amazon. There are a few more slides, and I have already quite a few slides. So the first part has to do with a generative and regenerative process that is more defined by patterns and pattern languages, while the second part, when you look at starting from 9, Urban Theory, Part 3, that has to do more with dynamics of urbanism. I can't get into that because that's a whole different, separate topic. And the number 3, when you look at 15, Conclusion, Outlook, Theory, Part 3, that gets into generative codes, and that we can't get it all to. So let's try to get right into this here. And as Howard already mentioned, I'm not going to talk at all today about the Bauhaus tradition and the modernist tradition that I know from Germany, but I'm going to talk about this tradition, the organic tradition, or the, if you want, the system theory-based tradition that I certainly appreciate and learned in mostly California and also here in Oregon. If we go right into a systematic look at what the two large traditions of Eugene are, sustainability as well as pattern languages. This is trying to, in a cloud kind of poster, put the two together. And I think it is those two that actually are highly appreciated by our students. And there's a long tradition, obviously, with the pattern language and a little bit of a younger tradition with the sustainability, but these two things go highly well together. And I want to show you why. Because there's something you may not have heard about, and that is that Chris Alexander just got the Global Award for Sustainable Architecture by the Locus Foundation in Paris, and that is supported by the UNESCO. And these people recognize that actually the pattern language itself was already highly sustainable, but the word didn't exist at the time. The word existed, but it wasn't used. As the French say, this was avant le lettre. That means the letter, the word, did not really exist at the time, and I hope I can explain this a little bit later. But here you can see how these two things come to go together in a very, very intricate and obvious way. But I would like to talk a little bit in this short introduction about urban architecture in Portland. That's what we are starting, or what we're continuing right now with the urban specialization. And I just want to compare three words with three other words, or three similar or the same words, because when you ask our dean how she would describe what we do at the Department of Architecture in 3 words. These are the 3 words that I believe she came up with. And they are wonderful, and we all do that. But there's one more word that we also need to use in Portland. And that is this word, because in Portland we have a lot to do with urban life. We have to deal with urban architecture, with everything that has to do with urban structure, urban streets, urban buildings. So that's something that we are very much concerned with in Portland, and that, of course, is complementary to what we do in Eugene already. And it leads me directly to the book that we are going to talk about tonight, mostly because urban life is one particular life, but this book is concerned with much bigger life, as the title says, Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth. Well, that's a pretty big title, and I can assure you that it's not my title, because that's almost a heroic title. My part of the title is the word battle, because what we experienced in Japan was like a battle. But for the life and beauty of the earth, that is obviously Alexander. That is on a level that I probably would not dare to call a book of mine like that if I had one like that. But let's get right into this so we understand what this is all about. And I think I'm going to read a little bit for the first 10 minutes because I have to make quite a few quotes from the book as well as from critics and reviewers. And then I'm going to get more into some projects where I talk again more freely. So let's just get into this. I know you can read this yourself, but I'll read it for you. The purpose of all architecture, the purpose of its spatial geometric organization is to provide opportunities for life-giving situations. The central issue of architecture and its central purpose is to create those configurations and social situations which provide encouragement and support for life-giving comfort and profound satisfaction, sometimes excitement, so that one experiences life as worth living. When this purpose is forgotten or abandoned, then there is indeed no architecture to speak of. So these are the authors. Continue with the authors. In any environment we build, building, room, garden, neighborhood, always what matters most of all is that each part of this environment intensifies life. That's very important. Intensification of life is something that you will hear quite a bit from us. We mean that it intensifies human life, animal life, emotional life, the life of storms, the life of wild grasses, the life of fish in the stream, the life of human kindness in a rough place where it may not be easy to find. There's a reason why this picture is dark, not in color, because when you hear the text you will understand why. Achieving this vision will require an intensive, lengthy global battle between 2 production systems. System B, the dominant production system today, seeks to profit from development and produces structures through unfeeling mechanical procedures that destroy opportunities for joy and human satisfaction. System A, the alternative, allows meaning to be built up progressively by benign, modest steps in the careful nurturing of our physical world. So here you have the battle. The battle is between system A and B. It's between a production system that is not quite capable of creating life at the level that we would like to have it, and another system that you can find quite often in other ways that is more prone to actually be able to do that. And that, of course, is a big discussion that I'm sure will create lots of comments. And on the right-hand side, you see actually the table of contents of the book. I think it's a little dark. Probably can't read it. So I think I'm going to leave that out for now, and we may be able to get back later. But you cannot read it, can you? Cannot. No. Yeah. Now let's get to the critics. They have a lot to say, and they have to say very critical, but also very supportive things. This is William A. L. Hamilton is a New York-based journalist who writes regularly on design for the Wall Street Journal. And I just take a little quote out of his review. Things are falling apart. All the goodness in man's creation and have been since 1900 and the dawn of modernity. Alexander states in his new book, The Battle for the Life and Beauty of the Earth, written with his wife Maggie Moore Alexander and Hajo Neis. It is hard to argue that environments are increasingly sterile, as Alexander says, and rarely nourishing, rarely places for happiness, excitement, romance, content, love. But a pattern language delicately observed, deftly reasoned, poetically presented, alternative to the sleek cynicism of modern architecture has turned into the offense, attacking with the aggressive take no prisoner posture of battle. It is no longer enough to take the high road. The book's fight-mongering stance suggests you have to bulldoze the low road too. If you get pushed, as one of the protagonists of the book literally is, you push back. And another reviewer, Michael Mahaffey here, writes, it joins other cautionary books of recent years. Jane Jacobs' Dark Age Ahead comes to mind, warning that indeed we have a choice and indeed a struggle if we want to avert in an unfolding planetary disaster. The choice is between a more beautiful, more humane, more sustainable basis for design or a continuation of the status quo, a default option that looks increasingly untenable and uncertain. Here's a phenomenologist. He writes, Christopher Alexander's latest book is subtitled A Struggle Between Two World Systems, and it is largely the theme of conflict, both conceptual and real world, that this eminent American architect and architectural theorist uses to organize the story of his designing and fabricating the 36-building, $10 million Asian school, a 2,000-student combination of high school and college in suburban Tokyo, Japan, began in 1981 and largely completed by 1990. 7 buildings remain to be constructed. Here again, one more time, the authors, now emphasizing the need for an improved production system. The creativity of society and the creativity of the environment and the way we build it are not minor issues. They are fundamental. They go to the health and freedom of society and to the capacity for society and environment to bring a valued and enchanting life to its inhabitants. To bring such a civilization into being, we must arrive at a new state of affairs in which the world's societies are able to create and recreate a healthy atmosphere, environment, buildings, and outdoor places which hold our thoughts together. Places that give us a coherent picture of the world from which we obtain nourishment, spiritual and material. We must build a civilization in which individuals are able to like themselves, to heal themselves, and to love one another in generosity. Without that, how will we ever be able to give ourselves, all of us and our children and their children, a good and worthwhile life? From Battle Introduction. Now, let me ask a question that, of course, everybody will ask when he looks at the dates and when you think about the time. You have heard 1981 and 1990, and that's all a long time ago. So why did it take so much time, so long time, so many years to finish the book of Battle? Because you see here a series of manuscripts. It starts in 1985, and the first manuscript was written, and then it goes on. A whole series of manuscripts were written from 1987 to 2001, and then finally, in 2012, the book was published. How come? I mean, that's a highly unusual thing, and I'm sure academia is not pleased that it takes so long because you have to produce a book quickly. So what? I mean, there are lots of answers to this question. It's an obvious question. One of them, maybe personal. Another one maybe philosophical. Another one maybe of another kind. But I would like to offer one particular answer to that question, and that is the following. The book was never called Battle. The book actually was called The Ordinary Way. And the subtitle of the book was called The Design and Construction of the Asian High School and College in Japan. And that's in 1983. So how come that actually it changed to a battle? And why do you even have to fight a battle? I mean, if you have a nice project like this and you want to write a nice, normal architectural book, this should be it. I mean, it should be great, and you can maybe produce it in 5 years. But even this book is not, or this manuscript is not so without some particular contents here. So let me just read you the first page of that book at the time. The New Asian University is a university entirely dedicated to the problem of the community and local autonomy. It is founded on the simple belief that one great period of human society just ended and that another is now beginning. This is 1983. What they may call the modern age began at about the end of the 15th century. We believe that it has ended about 1980. And in some ways, when we look back, it may have been that way. And that in the last part of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, an entirely new age will be created. Well, there may be something to that. A new age in which new methods of production and new human relationships will form the basis of society is now about to begin. One of the central ideas in the formation of this new age is the idea of local autonomy and local control. And because it is, there's a German word in the next paragraph, I'm going to read that to you too, an important German word. This idea may be summarized in the German word Gemeinschaft. It is also summarized by the old meaning of the Russian Soviet, even though this word has been entirely destroyed by its connection to 20th century Russian communism, and it is described to some degree by the English word community. All these concepts refer to a type of human group in which personal relations and personal identification of people within society form the basic interaction and also most important for the definition of the individual self. So that was the original book. And when you look at the 16 books that have been produced by Alexander and his co-workers, some of them actually sitting in the room here, you can see that this book is a total outlier. This book has nothing to do with the rest of the books. There's no battle anywhere. The rest is about intellectual investigation. It is about pattern language. It is about the nature of order. It is about notes on the synthesis of form. It is about carpets. It is about the timeless way of building. It is about a new theory of urban design. So where does this battle come from? That doesn't go at all into here. And when you look at the backside of the and see the books as just titles, you can see the same thing. On the left side, you have the battle, and when you look at all the titles of the books, well, it doesn't really go together. On the right-hand side, you have battle, and you see all the books, the Oregon Experiment, and the battle doesn't really go together. There's something that is new, and the question, of course, can be asked: well, is that a new tendency, a new direction in the Center for Environmental Structure in Alexander and people who work with him? Is it all about battle now? Well, I don't think so. I mean, that might be a little bit too simple and might not be the right way to look at it at all. I think one has to understand that in the project in Japan, both is reflected, the battle as well as the ordinary way. Because if it wasn't that way, then you would have either a very bad project or no project at all. So both has to be understood and both has to be considered as something in its own right. And how to put the two together, well, that's a whole other issue that we have to think about. I show you a few slides, just 5 or 6 of the project that give you some idea. The first slide, when you have all these flags on the field, well, that might look like a battle. Looks almost like a medieval situation where flags are there and horses are around. But the other pictures have nothing to do with battle. They are peaceful pictures about a project that in 1986, when I took these pictures, just very peaceful there, wonderful, with the snow and these are the school, the classroom buildings, and there's an island where the sports hall is on the gymnasium, and there's a lake with it because it's bowl-shaped. And the interior is done with heavy timber construction. That was actually at the time the biggest timber construction of all of Japan. And details are abundant there that are based on Japanese tradition together with modern interpretation. And the landscape in which the overall structure sits is as pleasant as the buildings, I hope. This is in 2010 when I had my sabbatical in Japan. But I also have to tell you about chapter 24. I come one time more back to the book itself. The chapter 24 says large-scale building production unification of the human system and the physical system. And there were some attempts to actually find out how these two things can work together, system A and system B. System A is more defined by trying to work in community, trying to work with craftsmen in ways that actually the human side comes out strongly, and the work is actually done with a certain amount of not only knowledge but also put your heart into things. And so that's roughly, I mean, the system A has been described extensively, but system B is much more efficiency. That is like really, here we go, let's get it done. And of course, that's the other side of construction. And both, of course, exists, but it never went to the point that a battle between those two things emerged, And one of the reasons may exactly have been the following. Especially in Japan, that may not be so easy, because this is a big project. And when you say 10 million at the time, well, at this point, that's like 50, 100 million cost of the project. This is a big project in Japan. And in order to do the ordinary way, you not only design the building, you also build the building, you construct it. And that is a very typical element of CES and of Chris Alexander's approach, and what Howard and I have been doing to build the building too, not only design it. I think Howard did this already in the Mexicali project, where they designed and built with the users and developed something that has more of this human touch to it, rather than being a machine that is highly efficient, can do big things, but it doesn't get it right in terms of human feelings, so that when you are close to it, you actually like it, you love it, and your heart is into it. So that's roughly, I mean, that's a very, very rough description of the two systems, but it's important to understand it in order to make sure that one actually understands why there was a battle of that kind. So in chapter 24, this attempt to actually see if the two can work together, well, that didn't work out. So it's much more important at this point to investigate the options of system A more and see how that can be developed before you even think about putting the two together again and asking the question, how can they work together? I think it's a question too early. At this point, the question is more, well, how can they work? How can system A be more developed so actually it is more successful? Because it is obviously the weaker of the two in terms of power and efficiency. The actual chapter 24 that was published is the right-hand side, and that is a little different from the left-hand side. So, let me just show you this here in order to make one more other point, and that is, you can reach this kind of human quality in smaller projects quite efficiently. But when it gets to bigger projects, that is a real issue, because then the big construction industry, especially the one in Japan, does not let you do that. They will fight you. And that is where the battle came from, essentially, because they did not want us to build this project as well as designing it. And that was the source of the battle. And if they want to squash you like this, I mean, then of course you either go or you fight. Only two ways you can actually handle this. And since we knew we can do this in smaller projects very, very well, we thought, well, this is a project where we have to try it at the large level and see how far we get, because that's really where the importance of projects are. You have to be able to produce in this way in larger projects, in urban projects, in not just small buildings somewhere around. that are hidden. No, you have to do it really in a clear way that it can impact and improve cities, streets, parks, and whatever is there available to be built and to be constructed at a large scale. All right, with this short introduction, I also want to think about what the role of PUARL is. PUARL is, how I mentioned already, is the Portland Urban Architecture Research Laboratory, and as I said a little earlier, it is important to make sure that somebody continues this in a way that you can actually find out more things. And if you want to develop System A in a way that it actually can produce more good stuff, well, some people have to do some research, and that's also what PUARL does. But let me just briefly introduce you to PUARL, what it does in general. The Portland Urban Architecture Research Lab attempts to integrate wholeness and sustainability into the urban and architectural design process by conducting basic and applied research throughout the region and beyond in urban morphology, urban building typologies, and urban processes for civic groups, public agencies, and professional firms, as well as development interests. So that's the basic mission of PUARL. But there's something interesting in terms of what PUARL is known as well internationally. PUARL is known as doing some urban work in the region, in the city, West Coast and so on. But internationally, when we work internationally, we are actually more known as what you see at the bottom of the page. We are more known as the Pattern Urban Architecture Research Laboratory, because that's what they know us for. That's why people ask us to do something internationally. They don't ask us something because we are the Portland Urban Architecture Research Lab. When I do a project in Europe or in Japan, that's what they are interested in. And so might as well, it's not called this way, but this is what we are known for. So let me just briefly show you a few principles that we work with, because I call this approach the overall pattern language approach, as you can see at the top, and it has meta principles, it has primary principles, and it has other principles and techniques. And let me just tell you a few so you get a picture of what the overall approach is actually doing here. We have wholeness is a big word, and we need to explain this more in detail. Wholeness and sustainability always works together very well, and that's why I'm saying this is a long tradition in Oregon, in Eugene, and that is what we continue at the PUARL laboratory. And then there are primary principles that you're all familiar with: organic order, piecemeal growth, participation. And look at patterns and pattern languages. That is the most important principle, if you want, because it is the most famous one. Although we only work with 5 or 8% in our work, that will be there. But actually, that principle is so well known all over the world in all kinds of disciplines. When I go somewhere, you will find it in computer science, in biology, in psychology, in transportation. You'll find it everywhere. It is totally amazing when you go around in the world and you work interdisciplinarily with other people. This is what they know. And of course, I know in our department this is much less the case. I mean, we are much more in our own stuff. But when you go around in the world, this is what people know. And these are just some of the projects that we do that show how this work is actually continued or specifically interpreted in our particular projects within the Portland Urban Architecture Research Lab, and there are lots of areas in there. Let me just mention a few. The urban morphology and urban patterns at the top. There are 2 projects here, the Portland Urban Atlas project and the Innovation City Ruhr-Essen project that I did a few years ago. And then urban ecology and urban landscape pattern, City of Tigard Urban Corridor project, and eco-pattern districts and neighborhoods. So there is quite a bit of work that has come together over the last few years. And the next projects that we are working on is patterns and sustainability. I think we are talking with Nico. I think he had to go, but and the creation production for a living world. This is something that I continue to do with Chris Alexander, trying to answer some of these questions that I started to talk about. We also do the International Perl Conference every 2 years, and the last one in November of 2013 actually had the same title as the book. There's one little difference. I'm not sure you can see the little difference. The little difference is that the word "the" is not part of the title of the conference, but it's titled on. We see that little "the" on top of on the left side of the book. It says "the battle for the life and beauty of the earth," while the conference just said "battle for the life and beauty of the earth." But that is where we took up some of these issues and started to try to work on a few of the questions that came from the book, but also, of course, there were lots of other topics, as we know, that were also covered. So that's what we also do in our work in Perl. And these are books of the first two conferences, and right now we're working on the book for the next, for the last conference. And the next conference is going to be in Krems in Austria in July of 2015. And with that, I would like to tell you a little more of a secret. Because when Philip looks at this poster, he can see something that wasn't there before. And that is the block that you can see at the bottom of the main paragraph, which has a slightly yellow background. And I cannot even read it on my screen here, but I can tell you what it is. And that is that the company CES, with this project and the Battle book, as well as some other projects, has been invited to participate in the Biennale 2014 in the American Pavilion as part of an exhibition that shows the impact of American architecture companies in the world. And there we can see another reason why this work is quite well known internationally and respected internationally. Fine, I think that is enough of the book. Now we have a little more time to go into some of the projects, so you see a little bit more of the actual work rather than all this theory. But I need to start a little bit with a few theoretical points so that we understand what we are looking at. So these projects are seen under the idea of generative and regenerative urban architecture and urban design, and the theory part 1 is about generative design, this can be defined. In this case, I have put it together as regenerative design and re/generative design. Putting the two together obviously is a little more complicated, but let's just listen to the few definitions, to the two of the definitions. Regenerative design is a process-oriented systems theory-based approach to design. The term regenerative describes processes that restore, renew, or revitalize their own sources of energy and materials, creating sustainable systems that integrate the needs of society with the integrity of nature. The basis is derived from systems ecology. And the person who wrote this is actually from Judith's campus, because that is John Tillman Lyle, who was the first to actually develop this theory in a very, very nice way. But it is also very specific. It is more contents-oriented. It's almost like nature, where everything, life goes up and down. And so that definition is highly pleasant and precise, but it doesn't help you exactly enough doing design in a way, because how do you do this? That's the next question. So the next definition is a little bit more broad and makes it more possible to work with something. The next definition is generative or regenerative design is an applied form of generative science that tries to understand and conceptualize the world and its complex structure. As a generative or regenerative process, generative design attempts to formulate limited parameters, principles, and rules that interact with each other to create richness of life and behavior and endless variation of form, shape, and place. Here, generative and regenerative design are closely related in terms of rules and principles. This is more and more an Alexander kind of definition, along those lines at least, because here you can create a set of rules together for a particular task and then in appropriate ways make it work. And then you can change those rules if they don't work. So that is a much more open definition appropriate for more our purposes. That means you shouldn't forget the first definition. You should include it as a qualitative element. But this at least gives you something, a method at hand that you can actually work with. Now, generative and regenerative processes or architecture and urban design in the 3 areas that I'm investigating. Today I'm only going to talk about number 1, which is the pattern language approach that started since 1970. And that is represented in this yellowish circle to the right. And that is what we have to limit ourselves to today. The other 2, generative design and building processes and sequences, that gets into complicated sequences of urban processes. Very fascinating, but it's long lines of sequences, several hundred slides you have to show in one evening. It's fascinating, very interesting, but that probably we can do at another time. Right now we would like to go quickly back into what the first one is, the first generative or regenerative process. And I thought, I dare to show a few patterns so that we remember what it is. I'm not sure in Portland I have to do this because in Portland my students are coming from all kinds of other places and they're not very familiar with that. So here probably you know all about it, but let me just try a few of those here. Obviously this book is made up of several sections with towns, buildings, and construction. And I'm just going to show you the first 10. Maybe you still know them, you all are aware of that. But the first 10 is independent regions, and then there are several that have to do with the region, the distribution of towns, city-country fingers, agricultural valleys, layers of country streets, country towns, the countryside, and then the city starts with mosaic of subcultures, one of my most favorite patterns, and scattered work and magic of the city. Now, when I ask my students what a pattern is, I say, well, it's very, very simple and very complicated. And the reason is because when you look at the very, very simple threefold arrangement of it, it is very simple. Sounds almost like impossibly simple. Why is that so important, this whole thing? First is a problem statement, then you have a discussion and analysis of the problem statement that at hand, and then the third one is a suggestion and solution about an action. Well, it sounds like a normal thing. What's so important about it? Well, the first one is, that's the only one that deals with the whole world. The problem statement is metropolitan regions will not come to balance until each one is small and autonomous enough to be an independent sphere of culture. And then you have lots of people who have worked on this and were thinking that the world needs to be much differently organized, like many cultures don't even have their own state, if you want. Think about the Kurds, and think about all the cultures that don't have states. So the answer, or the solution to it is to develop and organize the world in ways that there are only states that are up to 10, maybe at this point more, 10 to 15 million. In this case, it was still 2 to 10. So that actually the world is in an organized state. Well, we are, of course, not there, but it's still a pattern that is very idealistically looking forward, and I think it's still a very interesting pattern. So idealism is a big part of patterns. That's practical idealism, I would say. The second one, city-country fingers, I'm not going to get into that. We don't have so much time. But this one is highly interesting. I like this very much. Mosaic of subcultures. Well, you don't want a city as something that is all the same, homogeneous stuff. I mean, that's a boring city. And you don't want it as a ghetto, that subdivided in ghettos. What you want is, you want a mosaic of subcultures, where you have a richness of life that actually shows particular cultures within their own boundary, if you want, but actually there's another one right next door, and it's open to each other. And in fact, when you look at San Francisco, when you look at Chinatown, you look at the area that is North Beach, more Italian, and then you also have the gay area. And well, there's lots of stuff that actually already shows that we live like this. And I think more of this would be helpful for cities today. That also has a little bit to do with what Howard is talking about when he talks about inclusive city, because you need to include everybody in the city, that they create actually something to the city and its life. So that's a very interesting pattern. But when we come to the real definition of pattern, it gets complicated. And then people, oh my God, what? Because then you have a whole set of things that you have to consider, because first you have to consider a pattern title, then you have an illustration, then you have hyperlinks, then you have a definition of the problem, then you have a main text, then you have a solution proposal, then you have a text that describes this in more detail, then you have a solution sketch, and then you have hyperlinks again. So it gets very complicated. And I'm not getting into this one. This is the pattern of looped local roads. What is important to understand is that actually with the hyperlinks at the top and the bottom, these are extremely important, these 2 points, because this is how patterns are connected, and that's how they create pattern languages. The hyperlinks connect you to all kinds of other patterns, and suddenly you are, and this is what I mean by system-based, by system theory-based approach to this, suddenly you have a whole organized system that at the time couldn't even be placed into the computer because there was no computer application. Today, of course, that's very easy. Today you can do this and everybody does it, obviously. But it was already set up in a way that the computer was just needed in order to actually put this together. At that time, you had to put it into a book. And actually, that's how it really works successfully. And that's why it's so successful all over the world, because you can put it into the computer. And it has a structure that everybody can use in almost any field where you have a problem, and you can organize it. And that's the first part. But the second part is actually equally important, because the first part only tells you about system-based, system theory, how this works together in networks and so on. Well, there's something else that is also highly important. That is actually the quality of what this is all about. And when you look at the 2 top left stars, see that, those stars at the top? The stars actually tell you that this is a pattern of high quality. It works, it has been tested, and it is actually something that is qualitatively very, very not only useful, but it can also be called good. And this second element, that actually things are being evaluated if they are qualitatively on a high level, that is the other element of patterns, together with the systems approach, makes this a highly, highly successful element until today. When you look at this slide, for example, you see the pattern old people everywhere, and you see on top of it other patterns that are at a lower level: identify a neighborhood, life cycle, household mix, and then at another level you have 156, you have settled work, and 75 the family. That together creates a little pattern language. You can also call it a web of life. I prefer to call it that way because that's really more what it is. It creates a little web of life that from there you can actually understand how to organize your life and how to build your life and how to build elements within that. And here, I think that's the last letter that is more about theory. This is a German professor who put together with a program that's called GraphViz or VizGraph all of the 253 patterns in a way that they're all connected according to how they have been defined. And this at the end says a pattern language is also a generative system or process defined as a combination of principles, parameters, and rules that interact and work together to form or maintain a system with structure and organization, cities, buildings, parks, and gardens. A pattern language is a generative process. And that's what we are interested in here. Now I would like to go to just a few projects so we can actually see how this works. And we are going to look at 3 examples of university campi, and that's where obviously Eugene is very important in, because it was the first campus plan that was developed in this way. Then we look at the University of Oregon, Portland, campus that was developed in a similar way, and then we look at the Asian high school and college campus briefly in terms of its ordinary way and how it works, not in terms of big battle, And then I have 2 more projects, if we get to it. One in Frankfurt, the Höchst housing project, and the final one is actually a project in San Jose, and I would like to give you something here that you can already start to show around or give from one place to another, so you get prepared for that project. So here first we go to the Oregon experiment that you all know, and that is still in place, at least with 2 principles. And this is our campus here, obviously, and there are many, many projects that are following the campus, originally the Oregon experiment, but now the campus plan. And the way this was originally developed, as you may know, there was the Oregon experiment, the campus patterns. They were first, some of them selected from the original pattern language, but selection of patterns, that's pretty boring. You have to actually write patterns, come up with, it's like coming up with a program if you want, but in a particular way, for a particular project, because just selecting some, that's about the worst case you can do. That's also completely uninteresting. You have to actually come up with stuff that is new, appropriate to the project. And these patterns on the right-hand side, those were specifically developed for the Oregon campus plan. And many of those are still in place. And of course, patterns change over time. They are supposed to change. They are supposed to be updated, and that's what's still happening. And I'm not sure what's happening with the participation process. I think Judith told me there's something not quite working. But overall, these things are still in place. And I think what is good about this is that Oregon is known for this in the world. This is not something that is a minor matter. This is something that actually I talk about in Germany, in Japan. Actually, Oregon does this. It's actually the only university, even in the United States, who does that and has that tradition. And I think maybe that's something worth. Maybe that's not so bad. This is the campus plan, obviously, here. This is the one from 2005, I believe. And these are some of the projects by here Charles Moore, who developed his project in this way. And not sure if this one was done in this way. I think they had their own ideas about how that should work. And I'm not sure about this either. But the Urban Memorial Union, well, that's clearly developed in this fashion, because when you look at the right-hand side, you can see on the top a set of patterns that I'm working with, and on the lower part you see the set of sustainable elements, the campus sustainable plan that they bring together in a way, well, that is highly interesting. I think you saw this lecture just a few weeks or months ago, where this was actually presented in a highly efficient way. I was quite pleased when I saw that in Portland. So that's a very interesting and good way about doing a project. Now, this is one of my favorite projects in buildings in Eugene, I have to say. This is Stephen Duff's Eugene kiln shelter done with lots of students, because he emphasizes not so much the patterns here, but the overall approach that comes from there, where you emphasize the quality of structure and construction in a very simple building. In other words, it doesn't have to be very complicated, a very expensive building. It can be something very simple, but you see principles in there and you see elements in there and when you go there, I really like to go there. Even this connection to the ground with this color, these base elements, are they? I'm sure they have something to do with Japanese and Chinese. I'm not sure, but they may also just come out of the process. I don't know, but this is a very, very successful building that for me shows in some ways the essence of what this is all about. And I show you now another project I've never shown before, but I put it in just for you. I've never shown it in a public lecture in Eugene. That's what I mean. I've shown it elsewhere, of course. This is the Agate housing project. It's actually not only the Agate, it's also the Amazon housing project that was done by CES in California, plus T&E. T&E is Felden and Edrington. And this was done with very little money. the square foot cost was $62, and how to get a high quality into that was not easy. It is student family housing, and as you can see, it is simple wooden construction. But I'm not so much talking about the patterns in here. I wanted to talk just about one principle, or maybe two, that you could call unity and variety, or more abstractly or more, you could also use another principle that goes with it, and that is adaptation. Adaptation to the point that actually everything works together in a holistic way. And that was at least what we tried to do in addition to the pattern language in this project. I know before we even started this work, a very, very elaborate pattern language was actually already prepared for this project. So it was quite a intense project, I must say, at the time, because it was not only supposed to be just that project for 20 units, it was supposed to be a pilot project for 340 units. And I show in a moment how this works. So this is one of the models that we did very early on. So you can actually see that the project is highly, highly simple. But actually, the trick is somewhere else. Well, this is very, very much washed out. But when you look into detail, you will see that actually not a single unit is the same. There's not a single of the larger volumes and the narrow volumes that have the same dimension in long or the narrow direction. They're all adapted to a tree or to some other element that actually works within it. For example, you see to the top right there's a tree where that volume was moved up from the tree so the tree could still exist. And that's what I mean by adaptation. Sorry, I don't have a pointer here, but things are actually starting out as archetypal structures, but then they get adapted according to the local condition, if you want. And that is very, very, very actually important in this project. And if you go to the inside of the project, you will see the same thing. You will see that there were 3 archetypal apartments developed. You can see 2 of them here. We call them, one is the thick apartment, the other one is a thin one, and they come together in this zone, in this Knautsch zone, if you want, where they're all different. Nothing is the same. And when you look at it, you will be surprised because we don't work this way. Normally, in modernism, what I learned in my father's office is that you work with prototypes. And the prototypes, you repeat them, and that's how we did a lot of apartments, No, in the organic approach, well, that's what you don't do. You work with archetypes. That means particular archetypal structures, but then they're all very different as phenotypes. So that's a completely different approach and worthwhile discussing or worthwhile thinking about. And when you this is actually Howard and my friend Wolfgang from Frankfurt, a well-known architect in Germany. When he came to visit, he was amazed about the rich variety of details. When I told him the price of this the square footage price, he couldn't believe it, that we could still get so much quality into the building, and still overall it looks all very peaceful, and it's highly simple at the same time. When you go into the details, they're quite elaborate. And again, this is the other flaw. You see, you can compare this again. None of them is the same. There's not a single apartment that is the same. Not one. And we have done this in other projects too. This is not the first project. And this is how it looks on the outside. And there's the third type, the roof type. Still another apartment. Again, you won't see one that is exactly the same. They are not prototypes. They're only archetypes and phenotypes. That's very important to understand for this kind of approach. And each one of the apartments had its own entrance and staircase, no common staircase, and how to get this all around. So it was quite intriguing, fascinating, difficult, and it takes about 25% more work than a normal project. But that's another matter. And these are experiments that we did in California, because if you build a project like this, well, it has to be affordable. $62 per square foot. I mean, you have to really calculate every detail. There's not much much to give, not much space there. And as you can see, this was supposed to be the prototype for this much larger project, which was called Amazon at the time. I'm not sure what it's called now in its finished version. And this is what we were working on at the time. This is actually Chris Alexander to the top right in the blue shirt. Fred Tepfer to the left. You all know Fred Tepfer. I'm sure he's still teaching here. And to the right side and the point below, this is our studio in Berkeley, where we developed huge models in order to get this all under control. And when I show you this picture of a smaller model, when you look very carefully, you will notice that, again, not a single thing is the same. And when you look at it, you think, well, they must be all the same, you know. But actually, they are not. And just look at just length. Just look at length and width of these things. They're all extremely different, so that it can be adjusted in ways that actually works. Now, there was a big discussion with the university, because in order to do this well, we requested that you do this as a process, because you cannot possibly design this all ahead. You have to do it in phases, so it's slowly. So you can actually do this adaptation process not only in design but also in the actual reality. And unfortunately, we didn't get it together with the university, because they wanted a product. They wanted a product that was based on a finished design plan, and not a process that actually created that. And so that's why we never got together. And this was not built by us. This was done by another company in the way the university wanted that. This is the project number 2, the White Stack Urban Facilities in Portland. And we were extremely happy that we actually could build it and design it in this way. And this was done by a process of patterns and participation. And we actually were the users. All of the faculty members, plus lots of other people, were actually the users who designed this. And that was highly unusual, because this is not even owned by the university. This building is owned by Venerable Properties, and Art de Muro, who was the owner, who unfortunately died last year. But he actually thought it would be much better to let us do this process, because then he got first-class quality design, and he made us happy, and he was happy. So he was a very, very, very wise man, and that's what we did then. Because we were actually in this building on the left side, and then we moved to the right side where we were. We also considered other sites, but that's irrelevant right now, because we got a much bigger not the whole block, but 3 buildings in a block, and it was a fantastic experience to do that. And the same thing applied again. Here are the patterns that we developed, in addition to the ones that already had been developed for Eugene. New Portland patterns: abundant natural light, an atrium for architecture and allied arts, prominent main entry, a street presence, galleries, event rooms, and a cafe, studios as a social classroom, generous hallways and lobbies. 6 patterns that we actually implemented. Some not so successful than others, but there were quite a few that actually were highly successful. These are some drawings by Mark Gillen at the time. Here is one pattern that you can see on the right-hand side, the studio as a social classroom. And what you can see there is at the end of where all the desks are, towards the river, there's this space with big tables, and that could be used in flexible ways by the professor. Could actually take it over and be the owner of it, or students create models there, whatever it is. But that pattern is still, when you come up there, highly successful. That works extremely well, and there are a few others that I can't talk all about, but I can assure you that one is. And then we worked it out more in detail with the students in this model that I did with them, and that went even into the details of what the desk should be like. And that was a lot of fun, because the students were also involved in this whole process, not just the professors. So that was extremely successful. But also what the process requires is that at a certain point you hand it over to the professionals, and then they proceed with it and go to design development and construction drawings. And then so there's a coordination, a cooperation between the process that is part of the University of Oregon's user process and user design, and then there's the professional part. So I think these two work together in highly successful ways, at least with this project that I had could experience myself. And just a few pictures here. This is the upstairs studio space. This is before, after. So this was an adaptive reuse. And here to the left you see this big hole that we cut into the floor between the 4th and 5th floor because we needed light. And that is one other pattern, that we need light everywhere into the building. And on the right side you see how much light we actually got on the 4th floor. Otherwise this 4th floor would have been terrible. So there are certain things that were unbelievably good, and we are still happy that we do it that we did this, because when people visit us, this is one of our assets. This building and our space there is really something that people want to be, they want to study, and I hope some of the grad students will actually come up there to this place. Of course, this was done together with sustainability. Here you see Charlie and Hella Yottir, who is the professional architect to the left side, talking about how to make this building also LEED certified. That was part of the whole deal at the same time. And when you just look at one example to the top right-hand side, you see the cistern, the water collection system that makes actually that whole building much more efficient and much more sustainable. And there are lots of other sustainable elements within that actually make this building to what it is. And so I only can say we were highly efficient and successful there, and we are still very happy about this. But not only were we successful with regard to the building itself, we actually changed the whole area. Because when you look at all these other projects that suddenly started after we moved in, after we started construction, Mercy Corps started a whole new building there. They took over an old building and then also built a new building on the other side of it in a way that old and new works well together. Or the Saturday Market came in there, moving from under the bridge towards the river. And now, at this point, we have also the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine there. That is the latest addition to this collection. So that we actually, and there's more coming. So we actually, I think we invested, or we helped to invest more than $200 million already in this area, creating an educational research corridor that is something that we started to create as a catalyst with our own building. These are just some of the projects here, the Saturday Market and the Mercy Corps. Here's the Mercy Corps it is right now, the old building as well as the new building, working fantastically together. And I think I'm not going to go into this one right now. I wanted to show it to you as a project, as an ordinary project, but I'm going to go right to, because in terms of time, I'm going to this is the Frankfurt project. I think we are running out of time. I'm going to actually a project that is the final project, and that is the Julian Inn shelter for the homeless in the San Francisco Bay Area, San Jose. And this is a very important project because in this case, I think that is close to what we talked about before, the regenerative process for situations where people are really in bad shape and they need help, and they, in this case, the homeless people, and really doing the best you can for them in a way that it really makes a difference. And this project has a set of patterns, obviously, and the set of patterns, not sure we can read them here. Oh yeah, there's the entrance transition, the living courtyard, the communal dining, private sleeping stall, entrance fountain, thick walls, and benches at bottom of the buildings. And when you look at the top on the second floor, you see these little rooms there. What do you think these little rooms are there? Those are the little stalls where the homeless people sleep, because they requested private space. They didn't want to have these beds in a row. They wanted to have private space. That's what they got. And they felt highly, highly pleasant with that. At the same time, you have to make the public spaces very, very, very pleasant. For example, you see on the first floor, there's on the left-hand side, there is a little indentation with columns there. That's the waiting space for the homeless because they all day long they cannot get all the time in there. They have to be outside. So that's where they wait so that they can come in. They are sort of half in already. All things that you have to carefully think about, they come out of developing patterns. Of course, you don't have to call it patterns, call it a program, but in this case they were developed in such a way. And then, in addition, this project is, again, built by CES with the help of some subcontractors, or more precisely, later on CES became subcontractor for several of these projects. And I showed just 3 of them here. One is the structure in the structure frame in the dining room. The second one is the column that you can see, and the third one is the wall. And and the fourth one is actually more detailed at the bottom, at the fountain. All elements that made this very, very pleasant building. Go, for example, to the columns here. These columns are actually pre-built or pre-tested at our construction experimental site in Martinez, and then they are refined. This is very rough at the right-hand side, but you test things so that you actually get it right. And that's one way of getting feeling and quality into it that you couldn't get so easily otherwise. And then to the left-hand side, it's more refined, and then built. And you can build it yourself, or you can actually develop it yourself to the point that somebody else can build it. Another element is the outside wall. And in the outside wall, you see already other kinds of patterns that come from the pattern language. For example, you see between the columns, there are benches that people can sit in the building. Because there's a certain depth with a column. And now this one, this is what Chris and Gary Black were working on. He's an engineer. This is actually the truss, and this is actually not the real truss. This is something else. This is a mock-up, actually. And mock-up is made out of cardboard, but put together in a way that you can actually test what it does, if it's actually good enough. And there were several of those. These were several calculations in finite element analysis in order to see which of the trusses actually works best, because in a finite element analysis, every little member is part of the calculation. It's not just a few members hold everything together. It's actually everything. It's like a basket. Everything works together. And you can see that the top one to the left looks good, but everything is the same size. It is actually not quite right in terms of overall quality. When you look at the bottom one, where you have smaller elements and larger elements, I mean, that already looked a lot more nature-like, more pleasant, and that's actually the one that was selected after many others had been tested. And here you can go into details of that. Even particular elements are being tested in ways that really consider all kinds of, when you look at it, very small things that might make the difference. When you see the top 2 right ones, well, one to the middle has a little element in between the two chords there, but the right-hand side doesn't have that. Well, I mean, those are all things that have to be included in detail in the work. And then it's getting built. To the bottom right, you see the actual material. What material is it? It's concrete. Well, the question is, how can that work? How do you get concrete up there in a way that it actually lasts and holds together? I mean, this is almost like a puzzle, how to get it up there. So the answer to the puzzle is very simple. It's shot concrete. There were considerations of producing it first to the ground and then lifting it up, and there are other ways of actually shooting it in place up there and then shoot the other side, and that's actually how it was done. So then you can see there are also some more additional steel bars in there because it wasn't quite enough in the other direction. It was in one direction, was okay, but in earthquake you need in all directions, at least in the 2 main directions, you need structure, otherwise the whole thing falls apart. So then it gets to very detailed elements like the outside wall with all these tiles, and there's one of the many designs to the right-hand side top in terms of a color sketch, and the bottom you see it as an actual mock-up on the wall. And there were many tests of that kind. And this is actually the final one that was used about 800 times. And you will be surprised that this one is a concrete tile that was colored with a brown color, and all the 800 tiles are all different. Now, how can you do that? I mean, that's like almost, some people would say, insane, you know. Are you crazy or what? You're painting 800 tiles? Well, that's good when you have students, you know, because then maybe 10 students can do this in a much shorter time, and they have some fun and they learn something. And that's how it largely was done. But actually, that created a large part of this quality of the wall in a way that you get these differences. It's not all the same. It's not this all the same harsh lines. It's a lot of soft lines, and it's a whole different kind of wall that you only can actually do in this particular kind of way. And if you look at the bottom left, there's a fountain that actually came later because it made a lot of sense to have such a fountain in the courtyard. And the tile that I gave around that, maybe I'm not sure who has it now, is actually is one of the tiles for that particular fountain. And that again was done by hand. And then you have an example of how that works. And that again creates some personal structure of uniqueness. At the same time, it's humble and nothing dramatic, but it helps the overall character of the building. So this is a building that was really developed for the homeless people in a way that normally you couldn't even do that. But if you create something of this kind in this way, maybe then actually you can do something that, and of course the homeless people appreciate that a lot. You've got a lot of fantastic comments. And my final quote, coming back to the book: the vision established in this book leads to a new architecture that we can conceive in our hearts and build with our own hands using processes that encourage us to make places of life and beauty, an entirely new built landscape embracing creation, art, craft, technology, ecology, and science will then come into view. One thing we can be quite sure about: the foundations of this new civilization must be rooted in its architecture. It requires an architecture for real life, a new physical structure. That means a new arrangement of physical forms, spaces, buildings, the shapes of buildings, and the shapes of spaces, and above all, a new and realistic philosophy of arranging gardens and streets, and a new philosophy of building them. Thank you very much. Oh, so yeah, if there are any questions, of course. I'm sure you have questions. Somebody got to start asking a question. Yes, James, please.
So, are most projects done with a student volunteerism involved, or no? Students working on tiles and
Well, it works. At the time, it worked like this. Some is we have had classes there that were construction classes, and students were allocated to a particular construction task for one quarter, or in this, I think, yeah, it was quarters at the time, and it could be something like this. You have to develop the whole thing, not just painting it. You have to test it, and of course under somebody who knows about this, how to do that, and then at the end of the quarter, the job is that it's finished. And quite often it's not finished because construction is a little bit different than the quarters or the semesters, you know. But in altogether, it worked quite well because you could get elements in there that you normally can't get so easily with normal construction, or it would be so extraordinarily expensive that you couldn't do it either, you know. So it works well with students if you integrate it with a class structure. Other than that, it's just then voluntary work. That's a different matter. You know. Yes, Philip.
Does the panel touch on the kind of design build versus design bid build. Frankfurt, right, for example, many or most of his projects, he was the GC with projects, and it seems like that's what this is implying. Is that part of the case of describing the battle?
Not inside the battle. The battle really describes the battle itself as something that happened, and I think the battle raises more questions of that kind. I have a paper where I deal with different construction systems in this way, but I have not extended it to the question that you are asking. That's why Alexander and we started this idea of getting this more in a systematic way, just dealing with the construction systems, which one are better for reaching particular qualities, which ones are not. I hope that ever gets on the ground, because Alexander is rather sick at the moment. Yes, please.
So you have System A and System B, and Haitian was one example of the conflict of the battle between the two. But in the case of, say, the White Stag building, you worked through the process of patterns, but the actual construction was still very much the conventional project delivery process. Are you able to reconcile for yourself, the success of that approach relative to what you and Alexander and others see as being much more of the ideal? Where
no, I think you are completely right. I mean, that was a case. The White Stag ladder has an established system that was actually then permitted by an established system from the university that was accepted by the owner already. That's a big step forward. So there was no battle. I mean, there was something that we all knew how to do, and then you have to accept this in order to get something done. You don't have to have battles all the time. There's no need for that. It just happened in this case, and it brought up larger issues, larger problems. But I think there are at least hundreds, of ways of how to do that right. So that also needs to be clearly accepted. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work in System A to find more ways of doing this right too, because otherwise you lose a lot of potential. But I think in today's world you have to be very flexible in terms of, and you have to, as Howard always says, it's not about ideology, it's about to do the right thing in a particular case. I think that's a very pragmatic, good way of looking at this. Because if you don't do that, then you're just
on the other hand, the way
not functional.
The rhetoric in the book itself is quite ideological and combative. I mean, it basically is presenting System B as
something very bad,
untenable, and yet you're saying that you have to be more flexible. You have to work within the system to the extent that you can to work with it, modify it to achieve a greater goal. I'm just trying to pull out of you.
Yes, I think it is good that the battle is actually being pulled out and is being put in front of us. That is good, and because there is a lot of truth to that. On the other hand, you also then have to think, after you have that clarified, well, now what I do now, and that is the next level of work in which I think large part of it, at least my work, will go into how to improve System A. I can work with System B any time because that's how I grew up, so that's not a big deal for me. But how to develop System A? Well, that's a question. That's not so easy. And I just showed the last project in particular that goes close to it without any battle. There was a little battle, but not a lot. And I think you have to see it in this broader framework. Otherwise, if it gets too ideological, that's not good either. It's got to be workable.
One more question.
In your introduction, it was mentioned that you studied philosophy, and I was just wondering how you think that comes out in your architectural design work or in working with System A.
That's a very good question. That's a very good. Nobody ever asked me that. I can tell you very simply. When I was studying philosophy in Frankfurt, at the same time the student revolution was going on. So this was a very exciting time. And of course, we were also, and later when I studied architecture, the question was then also, well, how do you create an architecture that is new according to these principles that we were developing in the student revolution? And in some ways, we didn't get very far. We got to social architecture, we got to something, how to do something social, but in terms of architecture as such, it was just a normal architecture. And of course, we had good models from the Russian Revolution, but we didn't come up with something on our own. And when I came to Berkeley, well, there was already some people, including Howard, working on something that was a lot more advanced than what we ever could come up with. And that was for me very intriguing, because I thought, my God, here's something that is doing this already that we were looking for in Frankfurt, and we didn't do it. We were very social. Everybody has to be included. We have to for the workers and all of this. But actually, real architecture, it didn't get much better than the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus did very well on that one with very clear principles, but we didn't come up with anything new. And so that is my connection in terms of that question that you're asking me to the book and to Berkeley and to this development.